Hello, and welcome to We Live for Saturday, your favorite college football podcast. I'm your co-host, Mike, and with me, as usual, is your other co-host, John. John, how are you doing this evening?
Doing all right, man. It's nice to have a day off. Glad to be here in Schenectady, New York, or close to
Okay.
Albany. Yeah, so that's where I'm at right now for work. But it's all good. Got a couple days off. It's nice just to kind of catch up and relax. It's been a busy few weeks, but yeah, and I'm excited to talk about these games. I've been able to watch what I can while I'm out here and try to catch up today and yesterday on what's going on, and a lot of exciting things, a lot of crazy things as per usual here in the Big Ten, and some other things that we're going to talk about even outside the Big Ten. So never a dull day in college football. So I'm excited, man. It's good. How about you?
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, man, I'm living the dream. You know, I was out west for a week with my dad or thereabouts, shooting birds. And then I got back to the cities on Friday, and I just really grooved into my couch and watched college football. In fact, at one point yesterday, your fiance sent me a message and was like, "Hey, I know it's college football day, but the Gophers aren't playing. Like, if you want to come over for chili, you should swing by." And I was like, "Ashley, that's so cool." And it's such a generous offer. And sorry, your fiance, excuse me. And but there's no chance I'm leaving my couch on this day. There's no chance. Like, full stop. I was like, we should hang out soon, but not today.
Well,
Because it was a great day of college football. And my only regret is that I started to lose consciousness during the second half of that BYU Kansas game. So I missed the crazy end, and BYU was ahead, but then Kansas had a terrible punt, but the punt bounced off a BYU player, and Kansas recovered it inside the 10, and then Kansas scored, and that's the difference between BYU being undefeated and not undefeated.
Wow. That's amazing. And there was all kinds of weird stuff like that happening this week. And
Oh, yeah. Super weird stuff happening on the college football field.
Absolutely. So that was really cool. And you know what, though, is like, she should know better. My fiance should know better, since I told her the story about how when you were in college and you were working, and anytime you like either had another job because you were like another year in college or whatever, you would specify and telling your employers that Saturday was a religious holiday for you, so they couldn't schedule you to work on Saturdays. And they couldn't
I was
ask you
like,
why.
there are days, here's my class schedule, and also I can't work on Saturday, period, ever.
Yep.
And they were like, ever? And I was like, ever. I was like, except for I will again starting in January. And they were like, okay. I would say that to shows I was in. I was just like, it was not. If it was a fall Saturday, you can forget about my flag football teams. You could forget about my participation.
I love that. I think that's perfect. And that's why, yeah, exactly why I was like, she should know that. So she should have known better. But you know what? Hey, it was a generous offer.
It was a great offer. And
I
I throw it out there, and I do, your fiance is lovely and a great person to hang out with. It was just not, it was just a great day of football, and I couldn't tear myself away from it.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, should we talk about some of the stuff? And after I, of course, introduce us again here with We Live for Saturday, and where you could find us. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. You can find us on Twitter at We Live for B1GSat. You can find Mike here at Alibaba26. You can find me at Norwegian Gopher. You can also email us, We Live for Saturday, b1g@gmail.com. So
and please, whatever platform you are consuming this podcast on, please go to YouTube and like the video, and most importantly, subscribe.
Yes.
Because the more subscriptions and likes we get on our videos, that's really the best way, especially on YouTube. That's the fastest way for us to find new listeners. So please, wherever you're consuming this podcast, support us and follow us on YouTube. I appreciate it, or we both appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Well, before we review these busy week 12 in the Big Ten, we got a couple news stories to talk about. And subsequent to their game against Oregon, Wisconsin head coach Luke Fickell has fired offensive coordinator Phil Longo after not even 2 full seasons in Madison. Now, when Longo came to town, it was a much ballyhooed thing because he's had a lot of success in the past, but also because Phil Longo runs the air raid. And Wisconsin was decided to do an entire identity change and say, we're not going to pound the ball anymore. We're not going to be that ground and pound Barry Alvarez, Brett Bielema kind of team anymore. We are going to get a bunch of skill players and a great quarterback, and we're going to sling it around a little bit. And we're going to spread people out, and then we're going to run the ball that way. When they spread out to that, then we're going to run up on them. So it just didn't work out. And in Longo's defense, and I think there's a defense for Longo here, Tanner Mordecai missed time last year, and he lost Tyler Van Dyke in week 3 this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, Longo never got a year with his quarterback.
Yeah.
You know, and he ended up with 2 years, essentially, a lot of Braden Locke, who is not, you know, who I'm sure Badger fans respect, but is not the guy Phil Longo wanted running his offense. Let's be real.
Yeah. So
I think there's a defense of Longo, but it's also, I mean, it's aggressive. You know, we saw Nebraska fire their offensive coordinator in season, and now we see Wisconsin do the same thing. Now, we had heard rumors that this was coming, and to be fair, we should give credit to our buddy Scooby at Scooby227 on Twitter, who's a great follow for all things Wisconsin. But he gave us the heads up in our group chat that Longo was going to be on the chopping block.
Yep.
And he gave us that heads up a while ago. So it's been, people within the program have known for a while that this was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes it really interesting to me. Why make the move now? Now, and it's interesting because Luke Fickell got a little defensive when asked about it in a press conference. He got a little, you know, somebody asked him who's going to call the plays. And he basically said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically said, why? So you just want somebody to blame. And it was kind of an awkward, you know, all he had to say was, yep, we're going to put in coach blah blah, and he's going to call the plays. Or, you know, it's going to be a combination of these coaches who are going to call the plays. And, like, that's all he had to say, but instead he got really defensive.
Yeah, got a little snippy.
So, John, I got to ask you, what are your initial thoughts on the Phil Longo firing?
Well, it seems that the dairy raid went sour.
You've been sitting on that. That's good. That's good. Yeah. How long you been waiting to do that one?
Since I knew this was gonna fail. Like, everyone knew this. Like, come on, you know. Look, I understand it wasn't like supposed to be like an all-out, you know, air raid offense. Like, it's not a Mike Leach offense or something like that. But the fact that it is an identity change, as we've seen before in programs like Nebraska, when they do that, it doesn't. First off, it's not a quick transition. If it does find success, it takes years to get there. And even then, it's not always, it may not work out that way, in which it clearly didn't here, and it clearly has not at Nebraska.
Nebraska has never gotten back to where they were running the triple option.
No, never
close. Not close.
Never recovered from that. So to take, you know, really. And it's interesting, like, hearing all of the rumblings and stuff from, like, the you know, previous players, you know, Braylon Allen even making comments, you know, that were a little cryptic, but not really.
Yeah.
And you know, what he was kind of talking about, and clearly some other Badger players over this last year showing their distaste for what was going on. You know, I think everyone could kind of see where this was going. Now, I understand wanting to, you know, have a quote unquote modern offense, if you will. But sometimes in some places, like a place like Wisconsin, man, it just doesn't work that way. Sure, if you want to start throwing the ball some more, great, cool. But you do not turn around and just don't run the ball, or find or recruit and have someone coming up that's going to be another Braylon Allen, Jonathan Taylor, Melvin Gordon, Monte Ball. Like, you freaking name it, go down the list. Every year there was at least one or two guys. There was one guy who was a stud.
Sometimes three.
Yeah. I mean, so this is like you don't do that, and not at Wisconsin when you have that going, and that is your recipe to win, and it is a proven recipe. And when again, here's another example of a coach like Paul Chryst who won consistently 9, 10 games a year, but that
Never won fewer than 9 games a year, just like Bo Pelini.
Yeah, but that wasn't good enough.
No.
So we're going to go away from that, and we're going to fire that successful head coach, and we're going to go a different direction. And we again. I mean, I'm sorry, Nebraska fans, but like you're the perfect example of what happens when you do that. And Wisconsin.
And they fired Frank Solich, and then later Bo Pelini. Yep. But especially when they fired Frank Solich.
Yeah,
that was crazy.
Yeah,
that was crazy, and it didn't work.
Yeah, and I know there's risk. You have to take risks to find success, and Wisconsin really feels that they should be, getting over that hump and being a college football playoff contender. But like I said, man, you're going to gamble, and sometimes it pays off and sometimes it doesn't. And right now it's not to say if Fickell can't turn around and find somebody who's going to fix this and maybe, reorient his mindset on what he wants to do at Wisconsin, which he absolutely can. I don't think he's in any danger of getting fired right now.
No.
But obviously if it's another down year next year, that could definitely be on the table. But yeah, man, it's crazy. Obviously we've seen, talking about Nebraska, you see that they had to change their offensive coordinator. And because what was working or what they thought was going to work isn't, and I don't know. Change is sometimes good, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes you got to stick with what works, and that's just you got to adjust and to your personnel.
Here's my question: did Wisconsin need a whole new offense, or did they just need to recruit a little better at quarterback? Because when they had the quarterbacks, it was working. And before we go on, I want to say, here's my criticism of the Wisconsin thing.
Sure.
I understand why they changed the offense, right?
Yeah.
To me, the mistake was trying to change the offense and the defense.
Yes.
Because they had this 3-4 scheme that they had recruited an army of awesome players for, and they basically had the best linebackers in the conference, outside linebackers in the conference, like every year. Every year.
Yes.
And they had it down under Jim Leonhard to a science. Mm-hmm. So to me, I understand wanting to change the offensive identity because you feel like it's gone stale. It did have diminishing returns those last few years under Chryst. But to change your whole identity on both sides of the ball at the same time when you are dominating on defense the way they were, seemed nuts. And that's why a lot of us thought they were going to give Jim Leonhard the head job and just say, let's keep this awesome defense and just update the offense.
At this point, do you think that was a mistake not to give Jim Leonhard the job?
Yes!
I thought so. At the time when it was happening, I was like, what are you doing?
I didn't because it was Luke Fickell. And I had so much faith in Luke Fickell after taking Cincinnati to the college football playoff. Which is crazy. He's crazy. He got a group of 5 team to the playoff. Nobody else did it. He did it, So I had so much faith, but there was a part of me that was like, they should spend $1 bajillion and do whatever it takes to keep Jim Leonhard there.
Yes.
Or they should hire whoever was Jim Leonhard's second in command on defense.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And kept the, when Iowa, when Phil Parker retired, they put Norm Parker in place. They didn't go looking for a new defensive coordinator. They were just like, hey, we already got it going. Let's keep it in-house, Yeah. So I didn't understand that at all. And then Luke Fickell, changing your offense, sure. Running the air raid in Madison always seemed like a mistake to me. Because even let's say you can get the personnel to do it, it's cold a lot of the year. Mm-hmm. And you're going to want to be able to run, you need a balanced offense, but you need to be able to run the ball when it's cold. You have to. And you get the whole month of November in the Big Ten when it's more or less cold.
Yep.
And you have to you can still throw it. You still can, you can still put up yards, but it's a little different. The calculus is just a little different. And I never I never thought, and I always thought the thing about it is that you need a different kind of offensive lineman, right? The spread are like the really long, really fast, kind of basketball player-y offensive linemen. But what Wisconsin had was a bunch of guys who were like between 6'3" and 6'6", who were like built like bricks, like literal bricks. Guys whose shoulders are so wide that they don't even look like normal people, really. You know? Like a really tall, like a spread offensive lineman just looks like a really stretched out normal person. But like a power scheme offensive lineman is like almost doesn't look human because they're so brickish. It's crazy. Like, and they're rock solid. Like, it's impressive. Like, it's a good thing. This isn't me body shaming in any way. Like, it's a good thing. But I always wondered, even if they could find the quarterback, even if they could find the wide receivers, are they going to be able to find the offensive line to run that scheme? And it turns out they couldn't find the quarterback or the wide receivers either.
Yeah.
And okay, last thing, and then I'll let you talk. Sorry, I'm very excited about this on like a number of levels. But oh no, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to add to what you were saying about not finding the offensive lineman and the quarterback or the receivers is apparently also not finding that next running back. Like,
yes,
I mean, Tawi Walker has been fine. He, he's
a good player.
He's good.
He's a good player.
But he's nowhere near the level of running back that we are used to seeing just being churned out year after year after year after year after year in Wisconsin.
No, you expect Wisconsin to have one of the elite running backs in the conference.
Yes.
Maybe not the very best one. That's usually Ohio State. But like one of the best ones, right? Yep. And Tawi Walker is good, but he's not one of the 5 or 6 best running backs in the Big Ten.
No.
No way.
He's like a little bit of maybe above average, I'd say, but he's not. Yeah, he's nowhere near the top, and that's also bizarre to me. Is just like the whole, like you said, the identity entirely, offensively and defensively, has totally gone away and diminished in such a very fast pace. Like
crazy.
It's crazy. I
didn't think it would happen like this. I didn't think Fickell. I mean, they went 7-6 last year, and they are 5-5 now, after never winning fewer than 9 or 10 games under Paul Chryst.
Yeah.
That's a big drop.
It's
a huge drop. Precipitous.
Yep.
Yeah. So I feel like if Fickell wants to make it in Madison, he has to get this right, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Like, he can't afford to have another offensive coordinator and just not work out.
Mm-hmm.
Or else it's going to be like, why aren't you winning more? You're the head coach.
Yeah. And I think if that happens again next year, I think he will definitely be on the hot seat. They're paying way too much for him, and they did. And it's going to be on their newish AD McIntosh, I think, too. Like, he's going to have to answer for that. So, yeah, man. But everyone thought, I don't blame anyone for wanting to hire Luke Fickell at Wisconsin. I think, at the time
it was a coup to get Luke Fickell.
Yeah. And it was a great hire. I still believe it was a great hire. It's just not working out right now. So
that's the thing about college football. You can take a good job and a great coach and put them together, but if it's not the right fit, it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not saying Luke Fickell isn't the right fit. I'm not saying I'm not saying that he can't make it happen, but there's a chance he's not the right fit, because we are 2 years in and Wisconsin needs to win one of their final 2 games just to keep their 22-year bowl streak going.
Yep.
That's crazy.
How wild would it be if they missed like that? That'd be insane. Like the first year, and you said 22 years? Yeah.
22 years. So that would be really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's crazy. Wisconsin fires Phil Longo. I am literally going to be on pins and needles waiting to find out who they hire.
Yeah.
Because this is going to be the hire that decides if Luke Fickell makes it or not. Period.
Yep. There's a lot riding on this for sure, man.
I'm
very fascinated, and
he better get it right.
And how is it going to affect the rest of this season? Like, to get to that bowl eligibility, like that's we all, I mean, I know Husker fans had high hopes for Dana Holgorsen to come in, week 1 and make a difference against USC, but I didn't see much difference.
One touchdown.
Yeah.
One. Yeah. One offensive. Yeah. Not great.
Yep.
All right. And then we had one other piece of news before we get into reviewing these games. And that is Georgia coach Kirby Smart is kind of a crybaby.
Mm-hmm.
He had some interesting comments after his 31-17 victory over Tennessee. And he said about the College Football Playoff Committee, about their decision-making and their football acumen. He said, quote, "I don't know what they're looking for. I really don't," close quote, said Smart, whose team was ranked 12th, but effectively locked out of the playoffs after last week's embarrassing loss to Ole Miss. I added embarrassing there. Quote, "I wish they could really define the criteria. I wish they could do the eyeball test where they come down here and look at the people we're playing against and look at them. You can't see that stuff on a TV. They're not in that in-game environment. They're not at Ole Miss in that environment playing against that defense, which is top 5 in the country. They don't know that. They don't understand that." Close quote. So Kirby Smart is 10-2, and he got his butt kicked last week by Lane Kiffin 28-10. Wasn't close. Georgia didn't show up. They got run off the field by a 2-loss Ole Miss team. And he wants you to feel really bad for him because it's so hard in the SEC, and it's so much harder to go to Ole Miss than anywhere in any other conference, apparently, even though isn't Ole Miss like not one of the more successful, like historically SEC teams? Just saying.
It's like a Penn State almost equivalent in a way.
No,
like
not close. No, Ole Miss is not close to Penn State.
Well, I'm saying
normally.
Like there's like Georgia, Bama, and then like Ole Miss is in
this year. This year, yes.
Yeah.
But talk about going to Ole Miss like it's the hardest place to go. Like, get out of here.
Yeah. I hear
Ole Miss has 2 losses, and there's this logjam of SEC teams that have 2 losses. And Kirby Smart is strongly implying that having, 2 losses in the SEC is better than being than having fewer losses in other conferences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that is when the audacity to do that, when the number 1, 2, 4, and 5 teams in the country are all from the Big Ten, and also 24. So it's not, we also got another one ranked in there.
Yeah.
Now, but to say that when the Big Ten is dominating on the field the way they are this year, to me, that's a direct shot at the Big Ten.
It is.
And at Indiana and Penn State, pretending like somehow what they've done isn't as impressive. And I got to say, that's ridiculous on 2 levels. One, because the SEC only plays 8 conference games still.
Yep. And who do they play in late November?
Alabama played Mercer this weekend.
Yep.
Mercer.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Kentucky played maybe Murray State or something. Like, they're playing layup games in late November.
Yep.
And still, despite the fact that that the Big Ten and the Big 12 are playing 9 conference games, the SEC thinks they should be able to get away with playing 8 games, and he's upset because there might be a bunch of teams tied at 10-2, and he might get left out. I'm just thinking, couldn't you have couldn't you just have done better on the field if you were worried about this? And also, if there were 9 games, you wouldn't have as many teams tied at 2 losses because half the teams would have another loss.
Yep. But that standard doesn't go for the rest of the conferences. Like if it was the Big Ten or a Big Ten coach making the same claim, it would be like, well, the Big Ten's weak anyways. It's not that good. Like, your wins don't count as much as ours. And that's
4 of the top 5 teams in the playoff poll.
I know, but that's where we get these narratives, from ESPN or like the Josh Pates of the world.
Yeah,
that continue to insist that the SEC is the best conference in college football that's ever been and ever will be, and still is somehow, even though this year they're not. Clearly, to anyone who, if we want to talk about the eye test and what I'm looking at a conference that is not nearly as good as the Big Ten. And that's just what it is this year. And that happens. That just
How many of these teams lost to Vandy? Alabama did.
Yep.
Like, come on.
I just think it's this whole mentality. And the thing is too, like they're born on third base every season.
Yes.
All of them.
They started out ranked higher than the Big Ten teams. It took winning on the field for the Big Ten teams to usurp the SEC.
Yes.
And they think that even when they don't win on the field, they should still get the plum position in the sports all the time.
Because they've been spoiled.
Yeah. Well, and they're also these people, they still act like it's like 2007.
Yeah.
Like now that the Big Ten is clearly on par, or in this year, I'm going to say better than the SEC.
Yep.
And was better than the SEC last year.
Yep.
This is a power 2 world.
Mm-hmm.
So like, if you want to take, I mean, I guess if he wants to take shots at the ACC or the Big 12, I guess he could. But even that, you know what? I'm not convinced that those 10-2 SEC teams are going to beat a Big 12 or an ACC team in the playoff. I'm not convinced that's for sure going to happen. I'm not convinced any of them can walk out there and beat Miami on a day when Cam Ward has his A game.
Nope.
I'm not convinced. So like, I think it's even ridiculous to take shots at those leagues, but it's especially ridiculous to take a shot at the Big Ten when we have the biggest stadiums, when we have stadiums that are just as loud, if not louder, than what you get in the SEC. I mean, completely comparable.
Yeah.
And that's proven by decibels. So like, I don't know how you can be serious.
Yeah. I mean, there was somebody on Twitter who was talking about that specifically, about how like if Indiana ever played at you basically was saying if they ever played at like a real stadium with like a real crowd, like, you know, like
they're playing the shoe this weekend.
Well, but the point was, and somebody came back, obviously some Hoosier fan was like, and pointed out like the capacity at Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, like, and what, like, Indiana's never played in an atmosphere that's incredibly daunting and terrifying to be in. Yeah, they've done it a lot, almost every year. They do that, especially when there was the Big Ten East and the West. Like, they were doing it all the time.
You can't hear yourself think at Beaver Stadium.
No.
Like, it's the loudest place I've ever been in my entire life.
Yeah. So no, man, it's a garbage argument. Kirby Smart is nothing but a crybaby. All of those freaking shills at SEC, ESPN, and Josh Pates of the world, and the other, SEC apologists that are out there, they can just freaking, they know where to put it. So I'm tired of it. And it's also on some of the people out there who just continue to feed into it too, because they're just too freaking stupid to like create an own thought or opinion for themselves and actually look at do the research. But
the ESPN types who spend this much time watching college football and then they opine on it like they have deep knowledge. And I'm like, you follow the NFL and the NBA and baseball and soccer and tennis and whatever, all before you follow college football.
Yep.
Maybe not soccer, but all those other sports, and golf before they follow college football. So like, they don't know anything. The ones who are pounding this SEC narrative, and it's not true on the field. The Big Ten has been winning on the field. The Big Ten has the reigning national champion.
Yep.
Like, and had the best record in bowl season last year, and the best, and out of conference play and stuff. So like, it's all just silly.
Yep, but we deal with this every year, and guess what?
It's
going to be the same thing next year.
Oh yeah,
and the whole narrative too that I know a lot of people have been pointing out about how when the SEC beats up on each other, it's like, oh wow, look how deep this conference is. But when the Big Ten does it, oh wow, that conference is probably terrible. They're probably garbage. They're trash. Like Ohio State got beat. Oh man, that must mean they're terrible, and everyone else is bad too. Like what? Like it doesn't make any sense.
It makes no sense, and they can't handle. And it's, you know what? I promise you, when bowl season rolls around, I bet you anything the Big Ten has a winning record against the SEC, and I'll say it right now.
Yeah. And
then we can go back and check it and see what happens.
Sure.
In the playoffs and in bowl season, because there'll be plenty of head-to-head matchups, and we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yep.
And we'll see who has the national champion, which is the ultimate test that the SEC decided was the test of this sport. I always thought depth should matter a little more, but the SEC said, no, if you have the national champion, then you're the best conference. Okay. Well,
Yep.
the Big Ten has the reigning national champion, and the Big Ten has 4 of the top five ranked teams right now. So,
well, but they just change the narrative to whatever suits them, because right now it's what they want to claim, that they have depth, and that's why their losses shouldn't count as much as what the Big Ten is. So it's all bad.
Man, do you know what Illinois would do to Vandy?
Oh, Illinois would destroy them. Absolutely.
Yeah, they'd whip them.
Yep.
They'd whip them.
Yep.
I'd love to see, man, you go down the line, like side by side, record by record, and I guarantee you I'm taking more Big Ten teams than SEC teams.
Yep. 100%, dude. Absolutely.
Yeah. And regardless, you got to prove it on the field. They haven't proved it on the field. If they wanted to be ranked higher, when Georgia was running the national championships, they were losing 1 game a year, and that's it. Okay?
Yep.
Well, if you lost 1 game this year, then you'd be in the top 5.
Mm-hmm.
But you didn't. You lost 2. And so now you lost control of the narrative. Too bad.
Yeah. That's the way it works.
Yeah.
That's it. And I hope that somehow, someday, we can get over and get past all of this, and that can change as time goes on here, and it becomes evident that the Big Ten is on the equal playing field as the SEC. That hopefully some people will decide to.
I think it's going to take 2 more national titles in the next 4 years.
Yeah.
I think if the Big Ten wins the Natty this year and then wins it in the next 2 years after that sometime, and then has 3 out of 4 or 4 out of 4, I think then at that point, everyone but the most diehard ESPN shills like Adam Rittenberg will have to see the light.
Yeah.
But there's no getting to Rittenberg. He'll be extolling the virtues of the SEC for the rest of his life.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, Paul Feinbaum, and then obviously our guy Josh Pate, who wants to be
wants to be Paul Feinbaum, as you say.
Yeah. He's hoping to take over that spot if or when Paul Feinbaum ever retires. But
it's like Ryan Seacrest to Dick Clark.
Yep.
Of the SEC.
That's
all right. Should we get into these games?
Yeah, let's do that.
Awesome. All right. The first of this game was the one on Friday, November 15th. John, I've really been liking having one Big Ten game on Friday night.
I enjoy it.
That way I can watch without anything else on that I need to keep track of. And it's like a great way to ease yourself into the weekend of college football. So we had the 6-5 Washington Huskies 31, the 4-6 UCLA Bruins 19. Washington took advantage of a short field, then scored off of a long drive following a turnover to race out to a 14-3 lead over the Bruins. To their credit, UCLA executed a perfect 4-minute offense to score just before the half to cut the lead to 14-10. The teams traded field goals in the third quarter to make it 17-13 going into the fourth. Both teams had their chances in the fourth quarter, but the Washington D came up big, and the Huskies eventually rattled off an 8-play, 74-yard drive to put the game out of reach. UCLA suffered from a lot of the same issues they've had all year. The offense just isn't consistent enough to help the defense out when it is playing well. This game featured some drama from the Washington side as starting QB Will Rogers threw 2 picks in short order before being benched for agile Frosh Damon Williams. Williams played decently well, completing 7 of 8 passes for a TD. He also added 6 rushes for 31 yards. It's been a good, and at times at Mississippi State, record-breaking career for Will Rogers. But I'm afraid his tendency to throw picks has cost him his job. And that's a tough way to end your senior year by moving to the bench for your last few games. So I feel for him a little bit. That can't be fun. That said, Williams was very good and gives you a glimpse of what the offense could look like next year with more of a dual threat taking snaps. Running back Jonah Coleman had a nice day with 95 yards on 4.5 yards per rush and 2 TDs. Denzel Boston and Giles Jackson combined for 10 catches for 90 yards. So they weren't as explosive as they normally are. Washington only managed 306 yards for the game. So the Huskies won this game on defense and with grit. UCLA lost 2 fumbles, which was huge for Washington to overcome the 2 picks that Rogers threw. And Ethan Garbers for UCLA was okay, going 27 for 44 for 267 yards, just 6.1 yards per attempt, 2 TDs and no picks. But like most weeks, and unlike last week, UCLA couldn't run the ball, and that was the difference in the game. Shout out to Washington D lineman Russell Davis, who had 3 sacks and a forced fumble That's a huge day at the office for the big fella, so good for him. Washington needed big plays from the front line, and they got them, sacking UCLA QB Ethan Garbers 6 times. So, John, what did you think about this game?
Yeah, this to me, it was really the reason that Washington won this game was on the defense. The defense was up in Garber's face all game long. It looked like they were keeping up that pressure, and he was not able to do anything, which is great. I've been waiting to see this Washington defensive line to get that kind of consistent pressure all season, and they really came out hard, and they were playing really aggressive in this game. And although Ethan Garbers put up okay numbers. I mean, he had a 76 QBR rating, so he was all right. Through 2 TDs, but obviously costly fumbles, turnovers, things like that did not help him at all. And I was a little nervous, though, obviously with Will Rogers throwing those 2 interceptions and Damon Williams coming in, but it was just the fact that Washington could also run the ball and UCLA couldn't.
Yeah.
So I just think outstanding defensive play by Washington, and their ability to have more of a balanced attack, even though neither were, particularly, stellar. I'm not going to say they weren't elite, but they were good, and I think that's all they needed. And really, like, even into the fourth quarter, UCLA was pretty much. It looked like it was still a pretty close game, but then UCLA's defense just kind of petered out, and they just didn't have enough to hang on. So I think running the ball with Jonah Coleman and having Damon Williams there as a second option to run the ball, I think it just wore them down, and I don't think they had anything left by the end of the game. So, and then obviously Washington ran away with it. So, but defensively is where I would give the ball to. I would give that to Washington's defense for coming away with the win here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a fully defensive, kind of an ugly game, but Washington's defense played really well, and Jonah Coleman continues to be probably the best player that I didn't know was going to be as good as he is.
Yeah.
Going into the year, him and Woody Marks are 2 guys that are both exceeded my expectations that I had for them.
Yes.
So let's see, where does that put UCLA? So 4-6. Next up, they need to beat USC in the Battle of Los Angeles if they want to keep their bowl hopes alive. They do end the year against Fresno State.
Mm-hmm.
So they should be favored in that one. So if UCLA can beat USC this week, they could make a bowl game in year 1 of Deshaun Foster. And who would have thought that was going to happen?
I mean, they're still exceeding my expectations, even though maybe not by the record. I think I said like 2 to 3 games, which so I guess they have, but even just the effort on the field, man, mm-hmm. I'm still impressed with UCLA. They don't give up. They haven't given up at all in one game. So I'm impressed with that. So they can build off that.
Yeah. And then as for Washington, Jed Fish makes a bowl game in year 1. It hasn't always been pretty, but you got to give Fish credit for getting to this point with a totally new squad and coaching staff. They will probably lose to Oregon to finish 6-6, but 6-6 in year 1 under a new regime and a tougher conference, I think counts as a success.
Absolutely.
So congrats to our old antagonist, Jed Fish.
Yeah.
Excuse me. The rest of these games were played on Saturday, November 16th. So we had the number 1, 11-0 Oregon Ducks, 16. The 5-5 Wisconsin Badgers, 13. This game was not what I expected at all. No. I picked Oregon to roll in this game, like most people did. I thought the Badgers would keep it close for a half at most, but that's not what happened. The much maligned Wisconsin defense very much came to play. The Badgers had an early end zone interception that kept Oregon off the board, and Wisconsin maintained that level of intensity all night. Oregon QB Dylan Gabriel was pretty good, going 22 for 31 for 218 yards, but he managed 0 TDs and had that costly end zone interception. Running back Jordan James had a solid 121 yards and 4.8 yards per rush and a touchdown. But the Badgers played really good situational football and repeatedly made plays when they had to stop drives and get off the field. Oregon wide receiver Evan Stewart had a nice night with 10 grabs for 92 yards, but the rest of Oregon's wide receivers were largely shut down. Tight end Terrence Ferguson had 3 grabs, including a clutch one on 4th and 9 to extend an Oregon fourth quarter drive. So Oregon was trailing 13-6 and faced 4th and 9 from Wisconsin's 41 in the beginning of the fourth quarter. Gabriel responded by rolling to his left, firing a 15-yard rocket to Terrence Ferguson, which looked like it was going to get knocked down by Wisconsin. Somehow got through there. 3 plays later, James ran 11 yards for a tying touchdown with 13-14 remaining. And then after a decent punt return gave Oregon the ball at Wisconsin's 43 with little under 7 minutes left, Oregon moved into position for Atticus Sappington's go-ahead field goal. Sappington also made field goals of 35 and 42 yards in the first half. So, John, Wisconsin's defense did enough to win. They held Oregon 18 points below their scoring average of 34. It was the worst Ducks performance since they struggled against Idaho and Boise State to start the season. That said, the Badger offense just wasn't good enough. QB Braden Locke finished 12 for 28 for under 100 yards, an abysmal 3.4 yards per attempt, 1 TD and 1 pick for a QBR of 19.9. Woof. That's a horrendous performance. And it's amazing the Badger D was able to overcome such poor QB play to give them a chance to win this one. That said, Tawi Walker had a decent day. He had 97 yards on nearly 5 yards per rush. But with the passing game producing under 100 yards, Wisconsin only managed 226 yards for the game. So that's brutal, and it's just not going to be enough to beat a team as good as Oregon. So, John, what did you think about this exciting game?
This was wild, dude. I couldn't believe what I was seeing because we've talked all year long about how this Wisconsin defense, we just talked about it recently, before all this, how this Wisconsin defense just isn't as good as it used to be.
No.
But they showed up today. Something made them click, and I was very surprised to see that. They made Dillon Gabriel look very ordinary. Which I have not seen this season. I know that they had some slow starts, some tougher games with Idaho and Boise State. He looked a little bit rough around the edges there, but still, I saw it. I still saw like the elite play from him.
It was really the running game in those games that was the problem more than the passing game.
Yeah, but this, I don't know. It was bizarre, dude, to see Dillon Gabriel look that way, and Wisconsin's defense did it. That was it was all on them. So. Congratulations to that. Of course, you're rounding in just in time to play us at the end of the season. So good work. Really happy about that. Fortunately for us, though, dude, Braden Locke is not the guy. I thought last year when he came in for Tanner Mordecai that he showed some flashes. And I was like, okay, I could see this. All right. But no. It's just not. He's not it, man. He really just isn't. And Tawi Walker, like we said, he can only do so much. And he's not an elite. He's not an elite enough back like a Braylon Allen or a Jonathan Taylor.
No, you can't just ride him to victory.
No, you can't. He's not going to be able to carry the team. No. So really, just as much as I know, I want to praise, or say some good stuff about Oregon winning that game. I thought it was ugly. But the most impressive part of this game was Wisconsin's defense, and I got to give them full credit for that. It was amazing to see the Wisconsin Badgers stop such a powerful offense. Now I know Oregon hasn't had a bye week in forever.
8 weeks. It's a lot of games without a bye.
Yeah. So their
best receivers out, and they're banged up, and they're tired, and all that kind of stuff.
But still, you're going against a Heisman, candidate quarterback. So that they showed up and they did a great job. So, yeah, man. Honestly, congrats to Oregon for winning, but more importantly, I think you got to give congratulations and good job to Wisconsin's defense on this, even though it was a loss.
Yeah, I think that. For Oregon, this game proves what we've been saying all year. There's more parity in college football than there's been in any season since at least 2007.
Yeah.
When LSU backed into the national championship game with 2 losses. Even the very top teams are beatable on the wrong day. And it's setting up to be a 12-team playoff where I think it's going to be tougher than usual to predict the winners.
Yeah.
Like, I think we could see some upsets in the playoff for sure, like a decent amount of upsets.
Oh, yeah.
Oregon, Ohio State, and Texas are the top 3 teams in the country, and all have either lost or nearly lost. And the rest of the SEC contenders already have 2 losses.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really downgrade Oregon for this performance. This was their 8th game without a bye. They're missing some key guys. They're worn down. It's on the road at night. Like, they're trying to get to that bye week. And, yeah. So, like, yeah, they didn't play all that well, but I don't think they played any worse than, other teams have played.
Yeah.
Who have managed to lose games. They still won the game, even though it was their ugliest conference game of the year. As for Wisconsin, for the first time in the Luke Fickell era, you can see what they're trying to do defensively.
Yes.
They had a stellar effort on that side of the ball. It's definitely something they can build on. The offense, though, it's really bad. It's like Iowa bad.
Yeah.
Like Iowa last year bad.
Yes.
And it's just kind of gotten worse as the season's gone on.
Mm-hmm.
So the new offensive coordinator is really going to have his hands full, and it'll be interesting. I've heard that Tyler Van Dyke might come back, but obviously, after he's gotten hurt as much as he has, you're not going to count on him.
Yeah.
So, like, who is going to be the guy next year? Fickell's going to have to hit on a quarterback, or else his seat is going to get hot. Yeah.
I think so too. I agree with you. And one more thing I wanted to mention at the end of the game, or towards the end of the game, Hunter Wohler went out, and not sure if he's coming back next week or what's going on with him. But obviously, that would be a massive, massive loss. So I hope he's okay. It looked like it might have been like concussion protocol, from what I'm guessing, but not sure.
No good.
So,
yeah, but that'll be something to watch to see if he can play in these last 2 games or not. It's going to be a really interesting game. Wisconsin and Nebraska this week. Both 5-5. Both are in year 2 of much hype head coaches who have massively underachieved in both places.
Yep.
And the loser of this game is gonna be in real danger of missing a bowl game.
Mm-hmm.
So that's gonna be an interesting one.
It's crazy. I'm just grateful we're not in danger of missing a bowl game right now. That feels good. So
yeah, for sure. I'm with you on that. All right. Next up, we had a game that was a game for a little bit. The number 2 9-1 Ohio State Buckeyes 31, the 4-6 Northwestern Wildcats 7. So the Wildcats kept this interesting for like a quarter and a half. They had a first quarter drive they should have scored on in that ended in a red zone Jack Lausch fumble. So that hurt a lot. That said, they held the Buckeyes offense off the board on their first possession, and then were able to put together a clock-chewing 13-play, 92-yard TD drive to take a 7-0 lead late in the first quarter. Unfortunately, the Buckeyes bounced back with their own clock-chewing 12-play TD drive. And then the Buckeyes forced 2 consecutive 3-and-outs, and they scored TDs after both of them. So at 21-7, this was pretty much over at half. Ohio State started the second half with a TD drive to make it 28-7, chipped in a later third quarter field goal. And honestly, I think Ryan Day was content to call off the Dogs and sit on their big lead. So Ohio State QB Will Howard had an impressive effort, going 15 for 24, 247 yards, 10.3 yards per attempt, 2 TDs, 0 picks for a QBR of 95.9. So pretty impressive stuff. And Ohio State running backs Judkins and Henderson had 76 and 74 yards respectively. Judkins had 2 TDs. The receivers were explosive and efficient. Frosh phenom Jeremiah Smith had 100 yards on just 4 catches, including a 68-yard catch. Carnell Tate had 4 for 52 and 2 TDs, so it was a big day for him. And Buckeye safety Sonny Styles had 6 tackles, 2 sacks, and 2 passes defended. So a really active day for him, too. Northwestern QB Jack Lausch had an okay day, going 21 for 35 for 201 yards, just 5.7 yards per attempt, 0 TDs, and 0 picks. Stop me if you've heard this before. Northwestern once again couldn't run the ball. So yeah, that was kind of the story of the game for me. Wide receiver Bryce Kurtz was a star for the Cats with 7 grabs for 92 yards. AJ Henning had 5 for 42, but really Northwestern only had the one successful scoring drive. They just weren't able to capitalize on their opportunities, and they didn't have many opportunities. So, John, what'd you think about this one?
Yeah, I was excited. I was excited for that first half. I was like, oh man, maybe this is going to be a game. Like the Cats came out to play, but
Yeah.
they kept that opening drive, dude. I was like, oh wow, okay, Ohio State might be in trouble, and then they fumbled the ball, and that was and that ended that, and it was just it just kept happening. You'd see them kind of gaining some momentum, and then they'd either shoot themselves in the foot or something. Some mistake would happen, and that would just be the end of it. Or it would stall out. So I gotta give credit though. Northwestern did play hard through the end, the whole entire game. So again, I mean, I know that's like we're not going for moral victories here, but like that is a plus. At least they didn't roll over and die. But yeah, man. I mean, Ohio State did exactly what they were supposed to do. They took care of business against an inferior team, and they looked good doing it. So there's not much else to say. Offensively and defensively, they looked fantastic, as they should have in this game. It looked like it took a second to wake up, like a quarter and a half for them to wake up. But once they did, it was like, oh, okay, no, we're here, and this is Ohio State, and this is exactly what they should be doing. So, yeah, there's not much else to say. I think with this game, there's a lot to figure out though in Northwestern and Evanston over this offseason, because they gotta make some changes, man. They gotta find out how to run the ball or throw the ball or both or one. Just do one. If you can do one good, that'd be great. Right now it's a problem, dude. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do there.
I don't know if Jack Lausch is it.
I know.
I kind of don't think he is.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think Northwestern, so much of their success last year was because Ben Bryant was as good as he was. And I just think that when you have sort of the recruiting limitations you have at a school like Northwestern, you have to really evaluate on defense and at quarterback. And it's hard. And it's hard to get good skill position players there. So your skill position players are probably, never going to be as good as a lot of the teams you play against.
Yep.
But David Braun was able to do it last year and win 8 games, 7-5, won the bowl game. So I think he's the right guy probably, but you're right. The offensive coordinator in his first year has not covered himself in glory. He was at the FCS level before this, and it'll be up to him, for them to find, some players to build around for next year.
Yep.
Because they're 4-6 and they have games against Michigan and Illinois. They're not winning both those games.
No.
Yeah.
I'd say their season is probably done.
Yeah. As for Ohio State, all eyes going to be on the Buckeyes this week when a top five ranked Indiana Hoosiers team comes to the shoe.
What a freaking world, dude.
2 versus 5.
Wow.
2 versus 5. And that's going to be wild. That's going to be really interesting.
And there is no guarantee that Indiana does not win this. It's not like, they have a serious shot.
I mean, if Denzel Burke keeps giving up long pass plays the way Denzel Burke has given up long pass plays all year, I got to believe Curt Cignetti's going to find a way to pick on him and get Elijah Surratt on him and get, and make some plays. So Ohio State better be ready to play next week. That's all I'm saying. They better, none of this coming out slow. You don't want to go down a couple touchdowns early against the Hoosiers. You don't.
No.
That's right in Cignetti's wheelhouse. And we saw what happened against Michigan. He got that lead and then he just, it was too much to overcome. So I know Ohio State's a lot better than Michigan is.
Yeah.
But I do think this is a real challenge. And I don't, in 2014, a very good Wisconsin team went to the Big Ten title game, and Urban Meyer clearly said to his boys, his team before, "Hey, man, we got to win this game by 1,000,000 points or they're not going to put us in the playoff. And they won 59-0 and they got put in the playoff. And I know Ohio State fans think it's going to be that kind of game, but I just don't think it's going to be that kind of game.
I don't either.
I think Ohio State's going to have to, I think they're going to win, but I think they're going to have to really work for it.
Yeah.
And like Will Howard better not throw a bunch of, interceptions, and they better not, they better score when they have their scoring opportunities, because Indiana's going to.
Yeah, they will.
Yeah.
I'm excited for it. It's going to be a blast.
Yeah, it's going to be wild. I'm only going to be able to watch the first half of it, but that's, such is life. Yeah. All right. Next up, we had the number 4, 9-1 Penn State Nittany Lions 49, the 1-9 Purdue Boilermakers 10. I don't know what to say about Purdue games anymore, to be honest. Aside from admittedly decent efforts against Northwestern and Illinois, virtually every Purdue game this season has been the same. The other team plays really well. Purdue plays terribly. This was all exemplified when Purdue wide receiver Denylon Morissette got wide open for an easy TD catch. Unfortunately, the sophomore wide receiver thought he caught the ball in the end zone. However, he was way out of bounds. How does that happen, you ask? Well, Purdue's end zone is painted black, but for some reason, the color doesn't change once you get out of bounds. So instead, after the white out of bounds line, it's painted black for several more feet.
That's insane.
It's crazy. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen happen on a football field ever. So this gave Morissette the illusion that he was still comfortably in bounds when he was nowhere near being in bounds. This was a home game, and this is the Purdue athletic department's fault. Period.
Yep. Yeah. I don't blame him at all.
I blame the AD.
Yeah. Yeah.
The athletic director, it is your job to make sure you are ready to host games. How in the world can you allow an end zone where the out of bounds looks enough like the inbounds that you're going to make a mistake like that? And to me, this is just a symbol for what the whole Purdue program is right now.
Yeah. That wouldn't have happened under Jeff Brom, by the way.
No, it absolutely wouldn't have happened under Jeff Brom. I'm glad you said that, because I think Jeff Brom papered over a lot of incompetence in that athletic department.
Yep.
I think, Purdue's good at hoops, but when it comes to football, the program has largely been a mess since Joe Tiller, with a few nice years during the Brom era, and that's it. Well, the Brom era is over, and Purdue is back to being the worst team in the Big Ten, and it's not even close.
Yep.
So, yeah. Anyway, Penn State quarterback Drew Aller was an impressive 17 for 19, 247 yards, 3 TDs, 0 picks, QBR of 88.3. Tight end Tyler Warren led Penn State in rushing and receiving with 63 yards on 3 carries and a TD. Backup Bo Pribula had 56 yards rushing. So Nicholas Singleton and Kaytron Allen, Penn State's actual running backs, only had 60 yards rushing, but it didn't matter because the passing game was electric. Tight end Tyler Warren had 8 grabs for 127 yards and a TD, so another huge game from him. Wide receiver Harrison Wallace had 2 catches for 54 yards and a TD, and backup tight end Luke Reynolds had 3 catches for 53 yards and a TD. So Penn State, once again, is a more talented Iowa. They relied on the star tight end and backup tight end over wide receivers in the passing game. The Penn State receivers just aren't very dynamic this season, and it makes more sense to run their passing game through All-American tight end Tyler Warren. But it does, I think, limit Penn State's upside that they don't have any other receiving threats to take pressure off of Warren. And today, I mean, they even depended on, even lately, they've been depending on Warren to run the ball too, which.
Yeah, he led the team in rushing and receiving.
Yeah. It's, I don't know, man. Anyway, star D end Abdul Carter had 5 tackles, including 2 TFLs. For Purdue, Hudson Card had another long day, going 11 for 20 for 151 yards, 7.6 yards per attempt, 0 TDs and 0 picks. Backup Ryan Brown was 3 for 7 and threw for Purdue's lone TD. Purdue managed just 85 yards rushing on 3 yards per rush. That's really bad. Purdue tight end Max Clare had a nice day with 7 catches for 91 yards, but much like Penn State, Purdue just doesn't have any wide receivers who can get open and make plays on a regular basis. So, John, what are your takeaways from this one?
Yeah, I'll start with the obvious with Purdue. I just still think it's so crazy how there are so many busted coverages all day under a Ryan Walters defense.
Ryan
That
Walters.
was the defensive coordinator at Illinois with one of the best defenses I've seen at Illinois in, I don't know, 10, 15 years or something. It's been a long.
Oh, yeah.
And he was incredible. So like I don't get it. Just having your guys, it's one thing if you don't have the talent, but to have them out of position all the time and give up on their coverages, like I'm sorry, like that's inexcusable. And you of all people should be able to at least have them where they should be, and it's not happening. So that's the obvious thing to me. It's just absolutely insane. But then you go to Penn State. We can pat Tyler Warren on the back forever because he's just a freaking stud.
He's amazing.
He's absolutely incredible. I don't know what else to say about him.
Yeah. Best tight end in the country.
Oh, hands down. And, I think, but I do agree. I think that not having a wide receiver threat could hinder them, in next week, possibly.
Yeah.
Not picking Minnesota to win, but I'm saying that you're going to be playing against a much better defense next week. And not saying that they'll be able to stop Warren, but obviously we're not going to have to worry about your wide receivers more than likely. So that's very apparent. Now Tyler Warren definitely could carry that team, and Drew Aller can do enough to make it work. So
for a while, I think when they get to if and when they get to the playoff, I think that's going to be a big problem.
Yes, that's what I'm with you too. I don't think it's going to carry them very far in the playoff. I think other teams are going to be able to withstand that pretty easily. Unfortunately for Penn State, but yeah, dude. Penn State did exactly what they should have done. Again, this is just another example of a team who clearly was playing a much inferior opponent and was able to go in and just absolutely annihilate them, and did. One of the coolest things, though, was that simultaneous catch in the second quarter.
Yeah,
that was wild. I haven't seen something like that in a while. Like still don't know like who came down with that. I'm not entirely sure. I know what the call on the field was, but I still don't know. But that was pretty cool. Yeah. That was pretty fun.
Yeah,
so, just wanted to mention that.
Right on. Yeah. So Penn State on track to host a home playoff game. They end the year against a bad Maryland team. So I'm going to chalk that up as a win right there. So if Penn State can win at Minnesota this week, they will be almost assured of hosting a home playoff game. That was the goal for this season. Has to be considered success if James Franklin can pull that off. That said, the last time the number 4 ranked Nittany Lions went to play in Minneapolis in November, it didn't go so well. Minnesota just had a bye week. So they've had 2 weeks to get healthy and game plan for Penn State. PJ Fleck said he did not send his guys out recruiting on the road over this bye week, like the last bye week. So you can bet that Penn State's going to get Minnesota's best shot.
Yep.
So that will be a really interesting game. James Franklin and PJ Fleck are very close friends. There's a lot of storylines there. Minnesota's, going back to 99, Minnesota has ruined a lot of Penn State seasons. Some big ones. 99, 2014, 2019, off the top of my head. So it'll be an interesting game, and I'll be fascinated to watch, what happens in it for sure. As for Purdue, man, with games left against Michigan State and Indiana, it's looking like 1-11 or at best 2-10.
Yeah. But
probably 1-11.
Yeah.
That's a brutal result for a squad that went 3-9 last year. They showed improvement late in the year last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this team is not improving at all.
Yeah.
And you got to wonder how Ryan Walters is going to turn it around into what I'm sure will be a hotter seat next season.
Well, since I won't be around for the preview podcast, I do want to just give a couple thoughts with the Penn State Minnesota.
Yes, please
game. Do. I think this is going to come down to on which head coach is going to maintain good in-game decisions, because James Franklin and PJ Fleck are almost the same person when it comes to ruining their chance to win, finding a way to lose.
Snatching defeat from the jaws of victory.
Yes, they're both fantastic at that. Now, obviously James Franklin has the privilege of having much more talent to pull from, so that can get him through, I'd say, but I'm not sure that that's going to be the case this year as far as facing off against Minnesota. But we'll see, man. I mean, I think that's what I'm going to be looking for, is to see who maybe makes the first mistake when it comes to in-game decision making.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that's a really good point. And the first guy who punts on 4th and 1 from the 40, like from the opponent's 40, is going to be the guy I'm looking at, like, or kicks a field goal inside the 5.
Yeah.
When you should go for a touchdown. Like, the first guy who does something like that, or, with James Franklin and PJ Fleck, they both like to do the thing where they're like, it's 3rd and 8. Let's run the ball.
Yeah.
And it's like, that works sometimes, but it mostly doesn't. So, like, yeah, that's going to be really interesting to see what happens. On paper, Penn State is the favorite. I think they were started out favored by 13.5, but that number has come down by a point and a half.
Yeah.
So there's money coming in on Minnesota to cover at least. And Minnesota's been very good against the spread this year. So I think, Minnesota played their worst game of the year against Rutgers, period. It was an aberration, I think, in like what was otherwise a string of 4 very good games.
Yep.
So I got to think that that's sticking in the Gophers' craw, and they've had 2 weeks now to prepare for Penn State and get healthy and give them their best shot. So Penn State, I mean, I'm still probably picking Penn State to win.
Yeah.
But I think this game is going to be in doubt in the 4th quarter.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm going to say as of now.
Yeah, I think so too. I will be picking Penn State, but I agree. I think it's going to be a lot closer than what people are anticipating, and I would not be surprised if Minnesota found a way to win this game either. But
no,
not saying that's what I'm picking, but I could see it.
Yeah, that was the last time I rushed the field. I would join in this time, because I imagine against number 4 Penn State, if the Gophers win, there will be a field rush.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so that'll be a fun one to go to. Oh, other one note about that game also, the high is 32. And I know it gets cold in Pennsylvania, but it's not the same.
No.
It's not the same.
No.
And when it's, the high is 32, so it's probably going to be like 26. And when the sun starts to set around like 3:30 and you get into that second and you start to get into the second half, it's going to feel cold.
Yes, it will.
And that's a factor too.
Mm-hmm. We'll see what the wind's like too, if that becomes a factor as well.
Yeah. I hope it's not windy, because I do think like Penn State could lean into their running game, whereas I think Minnesota is going to need to throw the ball to win this game.
Yeah.
But I do think the cold is an advantage for Minnesota because they're just more used to it.
Yep. Agreed.
All right. Next up, we had the 7-3, number 24 Illinois Illini, 38. The 4-6 Michigan State Spartans, 16. Sparty made a run at Illinois in the second half, trailing 21-9 at the break. Sparty started the second half with a 10-play, 75-yard TD drive, which culminated in a 4th and goal TD conversion to cut the lead to 21-16. Looked like Illinois was vulnerable, but Illinois shut the door from there on out. They drove for a field goal on the next possession, forced 3 straight punts and 2 turnovers on downs to end the game. Their offense added 2 TDs on short fields to make the final score a lopsided 38-16. You got to hand it to Brett Bielema. Despite his O-line underachieving all year, he's found a way to be and not having a dominant running back. He's found a way to be 7-3 and ranked in the top 25. So yeah, he's had a somewhat favorable schedule. Absolutely. But he has largely taken advantage of that schedule.
Yeah.
Illinois QB Luke Altmaier was a workman-like 19 for 32 for 231 yards, 7.2 yards per attempt, 2 TDs, and 0 picks for a QBR of just 62.9, but that was more than good enough for this game. Running backs Josh McCray and Aiden Lafferty combined for 98 yards on 19 carries. So between them, they had a good running back performance. And the star of the game was number 1 wide receiver Pat Bryant, who had 4 catches for 135 yards and a TD. That is an explosive performance. Zachary Franklin added 7 grabs for 44 yards and another TD. Illinois linebacker Seth Coleman had 5 tackles, including 2 sacks. And as for Sparty, Aiden Childs was just 23 for 40, 256 yards, only 6.4 yards per attempt, 2 TDs, 0 picks. However, Michigan State only managed 87 yards rushing on about 3 yards per rush. That's just not going to get it done most weeks. John, thoughts on this game?
I mean, I was gonna say, I was like, wow, Luke Altmaier looked a lot better than his stats say, and he did, and he looked great, but it was because Pat Bryant is such a freak.
He's amazing.
That's
He's
why
amazing.
he makes Luke Altmaier look so much better than he is. Not saying Luke Altmaier is bad. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I think he's a great quarterback, but wow, you have a guy like
No,
Pat
I'm with
Bryant. You are going to look like a freaking stud every game. So, yeah, man, that really was the difference maker right there. And yes, Illinois' defense showing up in a big way too. When it comes to Michigan State, again, you see Aiden Childs with he'll pull off one play and he looks amazing and he throws up a YOLO and it looks great and whatever, but then like he continues to make mistakes and it's very apparent that he's got a long way to come. I know I'm on repeating myself here, but the guy's a freak athlete, and if he ever does get
huge arm, and
if he ever gets it together, like he's going to be extremely dangerous. But we'll see. They got to definitely coach that up. And they just got to get that run. They got to fix that run game, man. The fact that Aiden Childs is leading the team pretty consistently, I think, in rushing is a problem. Lynch.
I feel like Nate Carter's been wasted, man.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Carter is a better back. They don't.
Yeah.
Their run blocking isn't that great, and their pass blocking, frankly, hasn't been fantastic either. It's just that they have Aiden Childs is really good at escaping the pocket.
Yeah.
So it's a similar kind of Maryland type identity at this point in time. But I think Jonathan Smith can definitely fix that, ensure that up, probably by next year, because I think he's great. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I think it was a valiant effort by Sparty. Unfortunately, they just made too many mistakes, and Illinois was just very solid and disciplined, as a Bielema team usually is. And clearly they were able to pull this one off. And yeah, and when you got like I said, you got a guy like Pat Bryant on your team, you're probably going to come out with a win against a team like Michigan State.
Yeah. Illinois has exceeded all my expectations.
Yeah.
Pat Bryant and Zachary Franklin are both really explosive enough to just make up for that subpar rushing attack. The defense has been very good. So yeah, credit Bielema for having a big year with 2 winnable games left. He might have a shot to go 9-3 and win 10 games in bowl season.
Well, that's wild.
That's a big year in Champaign for sure. That's a, still a school that's mostly known as a basketball school. So like that's a big deal if he gets there. And I think there's a decent chance he will.
Yep.
Sparty still has a chance to make a bowl, but they have to upset Rutgers to do it.
Well, I want to say one more thing about Bielema. Sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead.
We said when other people were talking about Bielema and talking about how he's not going to have a good season or maybe he's not the answer at Illinois. We said it. We said, do not doubt this man. Do not doubt him.
Yeah.
And we right.
did. We were. We said that he was going to find a way to have a good season and, somehow out of nowhere win 7 or 8 games. And, he's right there.
Yep. Sorry, I just had to make sure everyone knew that.
No, that's good. I like taking our victory laps when we have them, for sure. But yeah, we were big on. We said Brett Bielema's not going to have 2 bad years in a row, and he hasn't.
Nope.
Yeah. Anyway, Sparty still has a chance to make a bowl. They have to upset Rutgers to do it. Luckily, they play Purdue next week, so that should be a win.
Yep.
Would be a big deal if Jonathan Smith can make it to a bowl game in year 1.
Yeah.
I think for program momentum, all that kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to them against Rutgers to end the year. All right. Next up, we have the 5-5 USC Trojans 28. The 5-5 Nebraska Cornhuskers 20. With his team reeling, USC head coach Lincoln Riley decided to make a change at QB. Was that the right move? I don't think we know enough to judge that yet, but it worked well enough on Saturday as new QB Jaden Maeva led USC to victory. Woody Marks was the star for SC at running back, but it's Maeva who got the headlines and who scored the go-ahead TD with 2:45 left in the game. Nebraska drove all the way down the field to the USC 14 with 5 seconds left to play, but after a false start, Greedy Vance intercepted Rayola's final pass in a double coverage in the end zone. For what it's worth, should have been pass interference on USC. Absolutely should have been called on that play. That said, Nebraska had plenty of chances to win this game and could not do it. The Cornhuskers have now lost 8 straight games with a chance to be bowl eligible just under Matt Rule. Just under Matt Rule. They were 5-1 this year. They are now 5-5.
Wow. They were supposed to be like what? Like I was told, like have like
8 to 10 wins.
8 to 10 wins right now.
8 to 10. Yeah. Yeah, that's what they said. It was an easy schedule, and Nebraska has a real coach now, and they were going to just tear through the Big Ten. So how's that going?
Well, I said 6-6. So
yeah, you did, and I said 7-5. I drank the Kool-Aid too much. I said 7-5, and I was like, but their schedule is so favorable, and the defense is back, and they should have been at least marginally better at quarterback, and there were a lot of reasons, but man, Nebraska has found that they can find ways to lose games. Nebraska's Sierra Wright returned an early Maeva pick 45 yards for a pick 6 touchdown against his former teammates. He used to play for USC. He also blocked a field goal attempt in the fourth quarter. So it was a great day for Wright in a losing effort. However, the Cornhuskers offense reached the end zone just once under new OC Dana Holgerson and managed just 254 yards total before the last drive. They failed to reach 325 yards for the 5th consecutive game. USC QB Jaden Maeva overcame the pick 6 and a 2-for-7 start to finish 25 for 35 for 259 yards, 7.4 yards per attempt, 3 TDs, 1 pick, and 1 fumble for a QBR of 79.4. Running back Woody Marks was the catalyst of the offense, 146 yards rushing, 7.7 yards per rush. He's really turned out to be a good running back for the Trojans. And wide receivers Deuce Robinson, Zachariah Branch, and Kyron Hudson all caught TD passes as USC rallied to win this one late. USC linebacker senior Mason Cobb had 9 tackles, including a tackle for loss and a pass defended. For Nebraska, QB Dylan Raiola had another rough day. He did complete 27 of 38 passes, but most covered very little distance, and he only managed 191 yards on 5 yards per attempt, 1 TD, and 2 picks for a QBR of just 45.4. That's another subpar day from the endlessly hyped former 5-star Frosh QB. It is just not coming together for Raiola the way Nebraska fans and coaches thought it would going into the season.
Mm-hmm.
The Cornhuskers ran for just 119 yards on 4.8 yards per rush and no TDs on the ground. That's not good enough. But they didn't do much in the receiving game either. Jamal Banks had 5 for 55 yards, but the next best receiving performance was from a running back, Emmett Johnson, who had 7 catches for 36 yards and that 1 offensive touchdown. So, John, what did you take away from this one?
Just another debacle for the Nebraska Cornhuskers, and I'm just saying, I told you so. I told you so. I told you so. I told you so. I'm sorry. This is what I said. I said it. Until I see proof on the field that you can win 6 games, do not tell me you're winning 8, 9, 10, anything above 6. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And this is the way it's going to be until that happens. I'm not picking Nebraska to win anything more than 6 games until I am proven wrong. So, and maybe it still can happen. I still think 6 games is a possibility for Nebraska.
Yeah, they got 2 shots at it.
Yep, and I think they could. I think they have a shot against Wisconsin. It's a big emotional letdown for Wisconsin after what happened this last week. So who knows? That could turn around in Nebraska's favor. But in Iowa, more than likely not going to happen. But you catch them on the wrong day.
But Iowa lost Brendan Sullivan, so maybe maybe that gives them a way in. Maybe
it could absolutely. Yeah. And I still believe in Nebraska's defensive line. So
yes.
But so I still think 6-6 is on the table. But again, so I just had to, gloat a little bit.
No, you should gloat. You were on an island. You were on an island out there. Everybody else bought the Nebraska hype. Even I picked them to win 7 games.
Yeah.
They're not going to win 7 games.
I was told I was a hater by every Nebraska fan out there. Which I'm not
they even
saying
kind of thought I was like, I got less harsh, but they were like, I don't know, man, you're saying 7-5. Like,
people laughed at us.
They're like, this is clearly an 8 to 10 win team. And I was like, it's a Frosh QB in the Big Ten, not just a Frosh, a true Frosh.
Yeah.
A true Frosh. And what I didn't know going into the year was how bad the Nebraska running game would be. I thought Nebraska would be able to run the ball a lot better than they have been.
Yeah. I thought so too. I thought that was going to be the strength of their offense, and that Dylan Raiola was going to have like some okay games, but not fantastic. But now I'm not seeing much of anything offensively at all. So, it's Nebraska is just doing what Nebraska is always or has been doing for the better part of a decade, almost a full decade at this point. And so, we'll see how that changes in the offseason. I do still think, Husker fans, that you have a legitimate shot at finally getting back to a bowl game. But
if they beat Wisconsin,
because
I don't think they're stopping Caleb Johnson. Do you?
No, I don't think so either. Unless they catch him on a really bad day.
And it's at Kinnick at night.
Yeah, that's
really... like. I just don't. I don't know, man. I just don't.
I don't see it either. That would be a miracle, but I think they have a shot against Wisconsin.
Wisconsin and Nebraska are the same team at this point. Now that Wisconsin's playing better on defense, they're both teams that can play well on defense, who can run the ball kind of well. Actually, Wisconsin's really the one that can run the ball, but who don't play much offense.
Yeah,
and it's going to come down to turnovers and field position in that game.
Yeah. Well, I also want to take a little bit of a victory lap when it comes to USC again as well.
And this one, I'm with you. I also get to take a victory lap.
Actually, this did not. We had them higher than this. Like, I had them go 7-5.
I had them 7-5. Yeah.
Yeah, and they are not even close to that. And they're also in danger of missing a bowl game.
Yeah.
So we've been saying all year, lean on Woody Marks, lean on Woody Marks, lean on Woody Marks. And what did they do in this game?
They leaned on Woody Marks.
Oh, and he ran for 146 yards on 19 carries and averaged 7.7 yards. And I don't know, did incredibly well and really set this offense up for every score they had, every point they had in the entire game. That was because of him. He's the best player on the field. Why aren't you using him every single play? Oh, I don't know. They got him into the passing game. It was working almost every time.
Yeah.
So, again, and you know what? That would have worked had Miller Moss been the quarterback too.
Yes, it would have. And Miller Moss wouldn't have thrown that pick six.
No, he wouldn't have. So,
because think of it, without that pick six, Nebraska doesn't score hardly at all in that game.
No. Yeah. So I'm just saying again. And we'll say this until we're blue in the face. The problem resides at the head of the table. Yep. It's not Miller Moss, and if Jaden Maeva all of a sudden starts having a bad game, it's not him either. No. It's the inability of your head coach to make the right decisions. And clearly, okay, so he did it now. Let's say okay, now he's finally doing it. How long did it take him to get there?
10 games.
Where are we in the season?
10 games.
Come on.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not going to buy into the all USC fans telling me how see Jaden Maeva, it's not Miller Moss. I'm like, oh really? Oh okay. Well, if it was Jaden Maeva was the solution the whole time, well then again, even more reason to blame your head coach. Then why didn't you make the switch earlier?
Right.
And why all of a sudden, oh, wow, yeah, well, look at us run the ball with Woody Marks. Yeah, you should have been doing that
at the beginning of the year. All year.
Because you
got to know who your best players are when you're a football coach.
You probably would have beaten Minnesota. You probably would have beaten Penn State. You probably, I'm not saying it would have happened, but I'm just saying, you would have had a better shot.
You would have had a better shot, yeah.
He was having success on the ground, but you refused to change the way you play the game. So, yeah, man. USC clearly was the more competent team, and I do think Jaden Maeva's legs definitely helped out and created a different wrinkle for that offense. I'm going to definitely give them credit for that, but I also don't think Jaden Maeva is a better passer than Miller Moss. I just don't.
He's way worse.
You can't convince me otherwise.
Here's the thing. Here's why I'm not totally sold on Maeva. He only had 2 turnovers, But not only did he throw a pick six, he threw at least 8. And I am not exaggerating. He threw 8 turnover-worthy balls on the day.
Yep.
Several passes went through Cornhusker defenders' hands. There was the one in the end zone that went through the guy's hands for a pick that ended up being a touchdown. Like, that should have been an interception. He should have thrown like 4 or 5 interceptions. But he only threw 1 because Nebraska DBs couldn't catch a cold. Except for the first one, Sierra Wright. But the rest of the Nebraska defenders, they couldn't catch anything. But if he keeps throwing YOLO shots up all the time, he's going to throw a ton of interceptions. And that's going to be the issue with him going forward. Can he limit the turnover-worthy throws? Because, dude, and he's just not that accurate. Like, the receivers were really fighting for those balls because they just weren't, like, in there. They weren't on the money like they should have been. So I would urge big caution to USC fans who think, like, Jaden Maeva's the guy. Because, like, what I saw from him does not scream he's the guy. I know the stats look good. I know he made big plays. He could develop into a really good player. But the guy who played on Saturday is going to lose a lot more games than he wins.
Yeah, I agree as far as like the receivers bailing him out in a lot of those situations because USC has fantastic wide receivers.
Yeah.
So I give them the credit more so for his stats than him. Maybe we might be proven wrong, but from what I saw, I'm just going to maintain that Miller Moss was just the scapegoat for Lincoln Riley's failure.
If Miller Moss plays on Saturday, I think USC wins this by 2-3 scores.
I agree.
Because I don't think he makes as many mistakes, and I think the offense runs a lot more efficiently, and they threw the ball enough and whatever. So
Woody Marks didn't all of a sudden look amazing just because Miller Moss wasn't playing.
No, he didn't just look amazing because Maeva's been there. Woody Marks has been really good all year.
Yep.
So USC fans think he's the future. Maybe he is, but man, I don't see it with Maeva. And I'm going to keep close tabs on him in the next few games. Maybe he turns a corner. Maybe we see him grow a little bit, but he does not strike me as an accurate enough passer at this level. And I just think that's a hard thing to learn if you aren't already there. Like when you're in, what is he in his second or third year of college? I think so. If you're not that accurate yet, is it ever going to come is my question with him.
Well, and if you're not happy with Miller Moss, you can send him to Minnesota. I also know probably about 14 other Big Ten teams that would be happy to take him.
That would take him on for sure.
Yeah.
Miller Moss will be fine, I think.
Yes,
I do predict that Miller Moss will be fine. As for Nebraska, man, well, no, first of all, USC, they probably have to beat rival UCLA this week to make a bowl because I don't think they're going to beat Notre Dame.
No.
So they better beat UCLA because it is going to be a long season in SoCal. Imagine if UCLA makes a bowl and USC doesn't.
Wow.
UCLA in year 1 of a rebuild and USC in year 3 of Lincoln Riley. And you're telling me, can you imagine if UCLA wins the Battle of Los Angeles and goes bowling? Because UCLA is only 4-6, but they end the year against a group of 5 team. So if they beat USC, they're probably making a bowl. So this is a big, it's a night game. I think it's 9:30 Central or something. It's really late. This is going to be a really interesting game this week, that one.
I'm looking forward to it for sure.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
As for Nebraska, man, what can you say? This was their year. They have the relatively easy schedule this year, which they won't have most years. They got a 5-star QB. It's year 2 under Matt Rule. They started the year 5-1. They blew out Colorado. And here we are. Month and a half later. Suddenly they've lost 4 in a row. They're 5-5 with remaining games against Wisconsin, who they never beat. I know Wisconsin's down this year, but Nebraska has beaten Wisconsin. I don't think they've beaten Wisconsin in a decade.
Yeah, it's been at least
10, 11 years.
Yeah.
And at Iowa, at Kinnick, where you're not probably walking into Kinnick and beating Caleb Johnson. So Nebraska has to beat Wisconsin this week if they're going to make a bowl. They have to beat them. And I am absolutely not confident they're going to do it because if you look at it, neither team has much offense. Both quarterbacks are questionable. Dylan Raiola throws more interceptions than Braden. Braden Locke isn't great, but Dylan Raiola throws more balls up for grabs than Braden Locke.
Yeah.
And Wisconsin can actually run the ball a little bit, which Nebraska can't do.
Yep.
So I think whichever team wins the turnover battle and wins the field position battle is going to win that game. And man, when you are depending on winning the turnovers are fickle. You know what I mean? They can go either way. And when you're depending on that and you need that to win a game, I just think that muscle memory is going to kick in, and Wisconsin players are going to think we always beat these guys, and Nebraska players are going to think we always lose to these guys. And I just think Nebraska's going 5-7, and I cannot believe we're in year 2 of Matt Rule, and we are even talking about Nebraska going 5-7.
Yep. Well, and it's, and I think I maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like didn't Matt Rule like remind or say something in the press again about how like we're not cursed, it's not this, like, and this is like the second or third time he's had to tell people.
You know who else said that? Scott Frost.
Yes.
Scott Frost said they weren't cursed too.
So I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on. It's funny too to me how like Nebraska and USC fans have like found this like friendship out of like,
oh my God, they're best pals. It's so funny.
The off-season hype and then the actual season failure and like the whole like we're still blue bloods type of thing.
Yeah, the thing where they have an superiority complex where they feel inferior, but they need to project feeling superior.
They're egomaniacs with an inferiority complex. Like that's
a good way to put it. Yeah. And they know how bad their teams are right now, but they can't. They have to keep saying they're good. They have to keep saying it to themselves. I mean, dude, there were USC fans saying that if Jaden Maeva had been quarterback all year, they'd be 9-1. And I'm just like, you are smoking crack.
Yeah. Well,
you're smoking crack. You are huffing ether. Like that is not. You are tripping balls. You are nowhere near reality. Nowhere near. There's no world where USC. You lost to Maryland. There's no world where USC goes 9-1.
No.
Not this year.
It's funny. Like I think and I tweeted it at you. It's just like all I hear is like if I were to say like, yeah, Minnesota would be undefeated right now had we just scored more points than the other teams that we played. Like that's all I hear. Like is just like it's a ridiculous argument. And at the end of the day, like it's more than that too. It's more than just like who the players are on the field. Like we talked about, especially with USC this year, it is not the players on the field. It is your head coach. That is why you lost those games, period.
Yeah.
That's it.
And the question is that why Nebraska's losing the games too? Because Matt Rule, dude, 8 times now, he's had a chance to clinch a bowl game and failed to do it. That's a lot in 2 years.
I know.
That's 4 times last year and 4 times this year.
I guess like it's weird though how like I still have more faith in Matt Rule than I do Lincoln Riley right now. Is that weird? Because it doesn't make a lot of sense. I know it doesn't make sense because I know USC can recruit a lot better. Mm-hmm. But as far as like a head coach, I still feel better. Maybe it's just because I like Matt Rule better as a person. I don't know. It's probably me just biased, here. But like,
I mean, I'll be honest, man. I'm pretty down on both of them.
I'm not
pretty down on both those guys right now. I mean, both of them, I feel like have underachieved in a big way, both last year and this year.
Yeah,
both.
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
And I think for a long time, man, when Lincoln Riley was in the Big 12, Oklahoma's players were just so much better than everybody else.
Yeah,
but you do not have that disparity in the Big 10. You just don't.
No,
you don't.
It's a lot harder.
It's a lot harder. And all the teams are talented, and all the teams have NFL players, and all the teams have big time skill players, even the ones you think that you're better than. And like they can all hurt you. And Lincoln Riley doesn't make great in coaching decisions. Here's the thing. Yeah, Lincoln Riley, I worry I don't trust him in the sense that I think he's going to make bad decisions and lose games. But I also think that the next Kyler Murray or the next Blake, what is his name? Whatever. The next great quarterback, Caleb Williams, Kyler Murray, whatever, he's gonna find him and he's gonna develop that.
Sure. What's
Matt Rule for sure gonna develop long term?
Yeah,
That's my question.
Yeah.
Like, what is his for sure? Like, Lincoln Riley, we know he's going to find a really great quarterback.
Sure.
Maybe not. Maybe not. He didn't have one this year, but either next year or by the year after, he's going to figure out quarterback. He's gonna.
Yeah. No, you're right.
I think they might waste a year on Jaden Maiava and find out he's not that good.
Mm-hmm.
But like, even if they do, there'll be another guy who will be a freshman the next year, who's a 5-star or whatever, that Lincoln Riley will show him all the Heisman trophies and he'll talk him into it,
Oh yeah. Well, and USC is just a popular destination for kids that age, man.
Yes.
Like I get it.
Yeah, you want to go to LA, you want to whatever, you want to party. But dude, Matt Rule, I don't know, man. If they miss a bowl again, then what's Matt Rule selling?
That's a great point, man. You're absolutely right.
So I think I'm calling it, I'm dubbing it the Disappointment Bowl between Wisconsin and Nebraska this week. And I just think, man, I think the loser of the Disappointment Bowl is maybe not going to make it long term.
Yeah.
Because like Wisconsin could still beat Minnesota to end the year, right? That's probably a coin flippy game.
Yep.
But like, it's not a guarantee, far from it. And like, you're there's a decent chance you're going to lose that game. Nebraska, I don't think is beating Iowa.
No.
So like,
this is their one shot.
And like, that puts a lot of pressure. Like, Minnesota might be able to play a lot freer than Wisconsin is if Wisconsin doesn't win this week. So I just think, man, I'm saying it right now. Whoever loses the Disappointment Bowl is going to be on the hot seat sooner than we think.
Okay.
That's what I'm putting my marker down.
All right.
Saying it. We can check back on that this time next year and see, maybe they both turn it around and do awesome, but I don't know, man. I just think momentum is real, whether PJ Fleck believes it or not. And perceived momentum is especially real.
Yes, it is. 100%.
Especially with teenage boys who aren't very smart.
Yes.
And make impulsive feels decisions. The feels need to be good. And right now the feels are not good in Madison and they're not good in Lincoln.
That's true.
Yeah. Also, I don't believe in Dana Holgerson. I think he's a jerk. No. And I think jerks can win. He's a good offensive coordinator, but when it starts going bad, players abandon jerks.
Yeah.
And I think Dana Holgerson's a jerk. And I think like if Matt Rule, like they better get off to a hot start next year. But they got off to a hot start this year.
I think they've gotten a hot start 2
years in a row
before that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I don't know, man. I don't know. The more I think about it, the more I think Matt Rule is going to go down as a historic failure. But
don't worry. In about 2 months' time, we will be told how Nebraska is back now. And
they're back,
and they're going to win.
Dylan Raiola in year 2.
Yeah,
year 2 and a 5-star quarterback.
Yeah, now it's going to be year 3, and they're going to win 10 games next year. Get a college football playoff berth. Yeah, so just wait. They'll sober up and then get drunk all over again. So that's what we're used to.
That's what addicts do. All right, moving on. We have the 6-4 Rutgers Scarlet Knights 31, the 4-6 Maryland Terrapins 17. Scarlet Knights scored TDs on 4 straight drives, not counting the late second quarter kneel down before half, and became bowl eligible for the second consecutive season under longtime coach Greg Schiano. Rutgers led just 14-10 at half and 21-17 at the end of the third quarter. But the Scarlet Knights added a TD early in the fourth quarter on a long pass to Demir Miller to put the game out of reach for this hapless Maryland squad. Rutgers QB Ethan Kaliakmanis had one probably his best day ever. Finished 20 of 30, 238 yards, almost 8 yards per attempt, 2 TDs, no picks. So this is the best performance of his whole career. So good for him. It came against the worst secondary in the conference. But hey, it's still a good performance. So good for him. Superstar running back Kyle Monangai had 97 yards and 2 TDs on 4 yards per rush. But the star of the game, like I said, was wide receiver Demir Miller, who had 8 catches, 107 yards, and the aforementioned TD. Wide receiver Ian Strong added 7 for 86 yards and a TD. Rutgers DB Shaquan Loyal had 13 tackles and a tackle for loss, including 10 solo. So good day for him. For Maryland, man, QB Billy Edwards was just 32 for 55 passes, 335 yards, but only 6 yards per attempt about. 1 TD, 1 pick for a QBR of just 43.3. Running back Roman Hemby had 87 yards on 5.4 yards per rush and a TD. I'm not sure why he didn't get more carries.
He looked good.
He looked good. And I don't,
including like he should have gotten the ball like thrown to him more too, because he was catching the ball and making plays too. Like, don't know why.
Little Lincoln Riley-ish by Mike Loxley.
It was.
Which Mike Loxley is known for, sometimes throwing the ball too much as well.
Yep.
Dylan Wade, Caden Prather, Ty Felden all made plenty of plays, but they just weren't able to score enough points executed at key moments of this game. I think the key stat in the game, John, for me, is that Maryland was just 8 of 17 on third down. I think that doomed them on a day when they couldn't get stops on defense. I mean, that's under 50% on third down, and I just think they needed to be more efficient there if they were going to win this game. So what'd you think about this one?
Well, Ethan Kaliak-Manis looks the way we wanted him to look at Minnesota.
Yep. Good for him.
Yep.
Took him 4 years to get there, but
he's
good
there.
For him.
And he showed it last week. He showed it this week. Now, yes, it was against the worst secondary in the Big Ten.
You still got to make the passes.
And he did. I mean, he looked calm and cool in the pocket. He was insanely accurate. It looked easy. And he is running the ball a lot better. He doesn't look like a scared deer anymore. Yeah, like he's got confidence and he's moving well and he's pretty quick. So
he's always had good athleticism. That's never been the problem. It's always been between the ears for Ethan.
And you know, obviously what he had going for him is that, you know, Maryland's defense couldn't get that pressure on him. So they couldn't get him in that state where he gets a little jumpy, but even still, he just looked, I don't think he would have gotten there. He was really locked in this game again. So so overall, Rutgers looked fantastic. You know, Kyle Monangai did what Kyle Monangai does, and even though he wasn't averaging a lot of yardage, he got it done, and he was always there when they needed him. So that was you know, and I still wonder if he was a little banged up.
Oh, he's for sure still banged up, right?
Yeah, he didn't have a lot of juke. He seemed you know, a lot of north and south, but which is obviously tough. So he's probably still a little bit banged up, but good to see him back. But my biggest disappointment is what I already mentioned here with Hemby, Roman Hemby not being involved more in the game. He was running the ball well.
What were they doing not giving him the ball more?
He was catching the ball and making plays. It was very odd. Now, and you just put so much pressure on Billy Edwards Jr., who I think is a good quarterback.
But Mike Loxley is putting so much on him.
Yep.
He's not Talia. He's not.
Exactly.
You know?
And you just saw him regress as the game went on.
As the years gone on.
And the years gone on. True. Yeah. Yeah. So it's tough, man. I think it's tough in College Park. I think that, you know, Billy Edwards Jr. is just he's just being crushed by the weight of the world right now. And I can't blame him. And they got to figure out something defensively, man, because I think Maryland's offense has the potential to win them games, but their defense is just totally inept. And I thought
it's really bad.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but what did we not think, or didn't we hear anyways that their defensive line was supposed to be particularly good this year? But
supposed to, but we haven't seen it.
Yeah, I thought overall their defense was supposed to be vastly improved, but it's
not.
Shown up.
It's bad.
Yeah,
it's really bad.
So, and Rutgers looks good. It looks like they kind of got their stuff together defensively, offensively. Yeah. They're looking like the solid team we expected all season long.
Yeah.
And it's just too bad it took them this long to get there, because I think they could, if this team were playing, you know, for most of the season, the team that we're seeing now, I think they would have won a couple more games than what they have. But, you know, here we are.
I mean, they still could.
That's true. Yeah.
They've got Illinois this week. And then they end against Sparty. So, I wouldn't pick them to beat Illinois, but, if they played their best game, they could beat Illinois.
Yeah.
And I would probably pick them to beat Sparty.
Yeah, I think I would pick them to beat Sparty at this time.
So, if they, it's not the 9 or 10 games that people were talking about in the preseason, but if Greg Schiano beats, let's say he loses, let's say he goes 1-1, beats Sparty, loses to Illinois, 7-5. That's still pretty good for Rutgers.
Yeah. For
where Rutgers has been as a program in the Big Ten.
That's true.
Which has been the punching bag of the Big Ten for most of its, its entire tenure really here.
Yep.
That's progress. So
Yeah.
Greg Schiano has done a good job at what is a very tough job, I think.
Well, and now they're bowl eligible. So
yeah,
great.
they're bowl eligible for sure. So even no matter how the season finishes, I think this is maybe not like a triumph for Rutgers, but like it's proof that Schiano is running a program that's sustainable.
Yep.
You know, I don't think Rutgers is going to go 2-10 next year. You know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
I think they'll come back and be ready to be competitive again.
Yep.
All right. We got through all of the games, John. Anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
Yeah, as always, if you want to find We Live for Saturday, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Podcast Addict. You can find us on Twitter at We Live for B1GSat. You can find Mike here at Alibaba26. You can find me, John, at Norwegian Gopher. Or you can email us, We Live for Saturday, b1g@gmail.com. Please follow, like, send us comments, whatever. We would love that. Retweet our stuff. That'd be fantastic. Anything you can do, we really appreciate it.
Awesome. And I will be back for the preview pod in a couple days. We may have a guest host for that. I'm not totally sure yet, so that's still a little up in the air. But John will then be back to review the games, of course, next Monday. So thank you all for listening, and get excited. We got a big week this week. We got number 2 versus number 5. We got highly ranked teams going on the road. We've got rivalry games. We've got bowl eligibility on the line. This is a monster week coming up in the Big Ten. So definitely join We Live for Saturday when we preview these games in a couple days. All right. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.